You might have an idea of what the feet of an ultra runner should look like. Here are two pictures, and then the question is, which one do you think is my feet and which one is the feet of a picture I took online? When you run 100 mile, you might go up to 160,000 to 200,000 steps. That's a lot. One step is nothing, but running 100 mile would put a lot of trauma with all of these steps, and you need to protect your feet. Hi, my name is Simon. I'm an ultra runner with 2,900 mile under my belt now, and I'm here to help you get into the sport, understand that it's not nearly as hard as it looks, and really it's about problem solving, and hopefully I provide you some solution that will be helpful. One thing you need to understand about ultra running, it's much less about being fit and much more about reaching a level of sustainability. That means taking care of yourself, and yes, obviously nutrition and these things are extremely important. One part of your body that is going to face a lot of trauma are your feet. Today we're going to look at foot care, how to take care of your feet, how to prevent blisters, how to treat blisters, how to avoid losing your toenail, and essentially just how to finish your race, because pain from blisters can lead to DNF. That will happen, you will see very messed up feet from running, and it does not need to happen. It does not need to be so bad. Yes, sometimes it will happen.
It happens.
What, shit?
Sometimes.
But with proper care, you can focus on other things. You can suffer from other things than your feet themselves. You might actually have an idea of what the feet of an ultra runner should look like. And here are two pictures, and then the question is, which one do you think is my feet and which one is the feet of a picture I took online of someone who said who just ran a half marathon? That's right, it's this one. And why? Because if you're an ultra runner, you need to take care of your body. Your body is what will bring you to the finish line, using your mind, of course. But if you don't take care of your body, no matter how strong your mind is, at some point you're gonna break down. So take care of yourself, take care of your feet, and avoid problem, like avoid suffering. There will be, if you're an ultra runner because you love suffering, trust me, you don't need blisters to suffer. It will come regardless. Just skip that. This one is not needed at all. It will still happen even with the best foot care. You will still have foot problem from time to time, but hopefully with this trick, you will have less problem.
This is the magic trick, huh?
Illusion, Michael.
Trick is something a whore does for money. Or it can be.
First thing first, you need to understand what's going on. So yes, there's a lot of trauma on your feet, and there's two things you need to think about, I think, or I class them in two categories. One is that you want to minimize the amount of trauma that your feet will have to endure. And the other one is you want to make sure that your feet can sustain a certain amount of trauma without being damaged. So we'll look into minimizing and prevention first to minimize this amount of impact. And the obvious first thing that lead to trauma is the longer the distance, the more likely you're gonna have feet problem and blisters. Now, if you're racing 100 mile, you can't really cut the distance, and if you're training for it, same thing, but that's something to keep in mind. I think if during training you're having blister popping up, you could try to dial it down a little bit and solve your problem before there's an actual blister, and then it's just a recurring problem where your blister pops, your skin is ripping, and you're just having problem in training, and then your training is not as efficient. So the longer the distance, the better your foot care needs to be. 100 mile, 200 mile, you need to be really good at that. To minimize the amount of damage that you cause to your feet, you need the right shoe. If you don't have the right shoe for your feet, then maybe your toes are just a little bit awkward inside, there's not enough space, and you're just banging your toe all the time, and that's gonna lead to a lot of trauma. So go to the store, try some shoes, try something that will fit your feet. A rule of thumb that we often say in ultra running is you should get half a size larger than you usually do, because your feet will be swelling during the ultra marathon. So having a little bit of extra space is important. At the same time, you need to think about your toe and the shape of your feet specifically, and you need to make sure that your feet is not sliding inside, because if it's sliding inside, if it's too loose, what will happen is running downhill, your toe will bang the front of your shoe, and that will induce unnecessary trauma. The other thing that you need to be careful of is your toenails. If they're too long, what's going to happen is that instead of having your toe itself maybe touching rocks or anything from the shoe, it's just going to be your nail. And that's the difference between pressing, let's say, on your forearm with your finger or pressing with a needle. You don't want the needle, you want as much surface as possible, so keep your toenails short, and that will avoid a lot of trauma. A lot of people losing their toenail, if they just had cut their nail shorter, they wouldn't lose their toenail. Now you might tell me, yeah, well, but now the toenails are falling, so you know, it's the same. Well, yeah, it is the same minus the pain, so you pick the one you prefer. Something also that you might not necessarily be able to change, but you might be aware of, and that's good to be aware of, is the terrain that you will be running will actually have a pretty big impact on the amount of trauma that it will cause on your feet. So if the trail is rockier, you're more likely to bump your feet directly on a rock, and that's a hard trauma instead of just stepping. The other one is if there's a lot of up and downhill, that's always going to be a little bit harsher, and the faster you go, the harder the impact in general. Now, I'm not saying you can change these things, and that might lead you to do things that you wouldn't do otherwise. Just take a little bit more time in just taking care of your feet, and it will be worth it on the long run.
I cheated. I want to keep my shoes dry as much as possible, and it's not a race.
The other aspect that you need to be careful of is that your feet should be as resistant to blisters and foot trauma as possible. The more you run, the stronger your feet will get. So maybe you went for your first 10K or first half marathon on a trail, you were so happy, you looked at your feet and it was hamburger meat. Arr, and now you're thinking, wow, 100 mile, like there's no way I can do that. Well, here's the good news, your feet will get stronger and you will get much better at taking care of your feet. You will improve there, and you will look back at your half marathon that you had so many blisters and you'll find it funny. But I know you don't find it funny now. Then beyond just getting your feet stronger, there are things that will happen to your feet during a race that will just make it weaker. And the big one is humidity. If your feet is wet or even worse, soaked, it's just like when you're in the bath for too long, it's going to be wrinkly and the skin is just more sensitive in general. So that's something to understand, is that wetness is a problem for blisters. And there's two sources of wetness for your feet. One is external. Are you crossing water creek? Is it raining? Are you on snow all the time? So these are exterior factors that you might or might not have control over. And then the other one is just sweating. If you sweat a lot, you might have more problem with blisters than I do, for example, and that's just something to be aware of. But there are things you can do to prevent that and to prevent the damage that it's gonna cause. The first one is you need to have the right socks. So what I do personally is I use two pairs of socks. One is a liner socks. It's a very thin fabric and it's absorbing the humidity directly from your feet. That's a trick that I had from hiking a lot, and I feel it's very helpful for me. And then the external sock is way thicker and it's smart wool. I'm not gonna name brands, but there's a lot of smart wool socks out there, and it's worth investing in good socks. If there's one water crossing, and I know you might make fun of me for that, and people look at me funny in race, but look, okay, I do what I need to do, is sometimes I will actually take the time to remove my shoes, remove my socks, cross the stream if it's not too intense of a creek, and then dry my feet and put everything back. I lose maybe 5 minutes, but to prevent a blister, for me, I feel it's worth it. The alternative to that is if you have 1 or 2 river crossing and you know there won't be any more afterwards, but you have a drop bag, you could do a full switch of socks and shoes. And that's very helpful. If you're someone who's sweating a lot, during your race, you might put in your drop bag extra socks, you might keep your same shoes, and just rotating them. And it's gonna be very helpful on the long run. Yes, it's gonna take you maybe 2 to 5 minutes to change that, but it's not lost time if you prevent blisters. So it's worth thinking about it, especially if you struggle a lot with that. Where are your blisters? You need to know that. And if it's, for example, at the back of your feet, maybe your shoe is not a right fit, so maybe shop for a new shoes. If it's between your toes, what you could try, I don't do that myself because I don't necessarily like it, but I heard a lot of positive thing, is to use toe socks, and that's gonna prevent the rubbing between the toes. What I do instead, and the reason I don't like it myself, is just that it felt awkward, but it's not that it didn't work, it just felt awkward. But what I do instead is I tape my feet where I know there's a hot spot. For me, it's the big toe rubbing with the other one. I will get blister on my big toe that can actually lead to me losing my toenail. If I tape it, it's much less frequent that I have problem with that. Just use whatever brand, but it's pretty cheap material just to prevent it. And you see me in my videos racing, I will always do that. When I'm training, I don't, because I don't go far enough, but for a big race, I'm more nervous about it and I want to prevent problems. All right, it's race day, it's going super well, and now you have enough experience to feel that there's a heat point going on. Maybe it's your heel, maybe it's wherever. but you have enough experience to know that that's gonna be a blister. Solve that before it's a blister. Solve that right away. It's worth taking the time. Next station, ask if they have maybe moleskin or anything like that, maybe readjusting your socks, maybe changing your socks, maybe changing your shoes. Prevent it before it's a blister. Moleskin will work great for that. Say you didn't notice, you're later in the race, you have these big blisters, they're painful. What should you do? Should you pop them? Should you not pop them? That's a great question. I actually don't have the answer. Sometimes they inject fluid inside. Personally, I don't pop them. If it's a race, I'm just gonna push through, and too bad. If it's training, I'm just gonna stop. And afterwards, after the race, what I do personally, I don't pop them. I know a lot of people pop them. It's the kind of thing that I feel there's no consensus, and because there's no consensus, my opinion is that it really doesn't matter. If you feel good about popping them, pop them. If you don't, don't. But they might pop by themselves, and that's what there is a consensus. If you have a blister that is open, what you should do is clean it up with soft soap, and then just put some antiseptic on it just to make sure that it doesn't infect. Then it could be a good idea sometimes, especially if you're running, to put a band-aid over it just to protect the skin, because the worst case scenario that could happen is it's opening, that's fine, but then it just rips open and it goes beyond where you actually had a blister. It's gonna bleed, it's gonna be painful, so you want to avoid that. But as much as possible, you'll want to air them out. So when you're home, walk barefoot a lot, whether it's popped or not. That's gonna be helpful. And for me, it takes about 3-4 days for a normal blister to kind of resorb itself, even if I don't pop it, and then it takes 2 or 3 weeks for the skin to be more or less normal afterwards. Black toenail, what happens with that? Well, the most common thing, like I said, is you didn't cut your nail short enough and then it just bang. But sometimes it can be a blister that formed underneath with blood. Typically, you will know it if there's blood underneath your toenail. It's gonna die, it's gonna fall. Should you freak out about that? No. Is it gross? Yes. Is it painful? No. A blister is way more painful than a toenail that will fall. It looks grosser than it is. What you should do with it, some people rip them away. I say don't do that, or not at the beginning. You're just gonna cause more trauma. If you leave it, it's gonna protect your toe for longer, and eventually it will fall off. It could take up to 3-4 months, and you can race with it. I've definitely raced many 100-miler with dead toenail, and as long as it's not just hanging a little bit and it's still solid, firmly there, it's gonna be fine. Now when it's kind of just hanging by just a little bit of skin, you could rip it away. And surprise, surprise, you'll be happy to see that because you listened to me and you wait a few months. There's a baby toenail growing underneath. It's super cute. And just like you're trying to pop out. And that's what you want. Then this one will grow fully normal within 6 months to a year. And you will forget about it until you don't cut your toenail again, and then you lose it again. And it's just a recurring process.
This is fantastic. Great Scott. It worked. I'm in the past. Marty, this is me. This is Simon from the future. And I forgot to tell you, these are only high-level tips, Marty. But they will work 95% of the time. So remember, find the right shoe, find the right sock, increase your mileage slowly, Marty, and tape your feet before a race. And it's important to keep them dry. Yes, that could mean changing your socks and changing your shoes in the middle of a race. And for the love of Einstein, Marty, keep those nails trimmed. But I am from the future, your future, my past. And in your timeline, in the past, you will have blisters, you will lose toenail, it will be painful. But Marty, what did you expect? This is ultra running. You need to find your solution, and you need to do these tips. But if you look for something with a little more kick, read Fixing Your Feet. This is the Bible of foot care and ultra running, Marty. I'm out of time. Good luck.
I hope that was helpful, these tips, and a lot of it's problem solving. A lot of them are prevention, but things will happen and you just need to try new things and find the right shoe for you. I would love to be able to say this shoe is the best shoe in the universe and you should only buy these. The truth is, you should find the right shoe for you. If there was one model that was the best, they would only do one model, but our feet are different. the best shoe is different. So try it out, and eventually the problem will more or less go away if you take care of your feet with changing your socks and things like that. But problem will happen anyway. And what I would say is that your goal really should be that you can be an ultra marathon runner and a foot model and open your OnlyFans, and you could actually fund your ultra running through your OnlyFans, your foot picture. So all you need to do with that is listen to my tips, and hopefully you'll have some beautiful picture to share. If you found these helpful, please leave a thumbs up. That's helping me a lot put this material together. If you have some additional tip for people or you disagree with me, please leave it in the comment.
Marty, I forgot. Don't take a second loan to invest in crypto. Tourloo.